Oh my God. Candace Owens, Glenn Beck, and Bill O'Reilly.
We have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision.
Wow.
And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
You seem to disagree with Hassan, saying Kamala would have also bombed Iran. So I'm curious what you think the Dems would have done in this scenario. Was bombing Iran even a bad decision? At this point, it seems to work out. I mean, everything would be a bit different now. Like the Republican approach to Iran has kind of been unhinged. Is it possible that they still would have bombed Iran with Kamala? It is possible, but the situation would not be completely the same. It's stupid to just have like such a one-dimensional view. But I mean, when nobody understands the politics or gives a about any of it, then it's whatever, I guess.
Are you done with Donald Trump?
He's been a chronic disappointment.
Candace, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you. It's good to be back, just in time for World War III.
Well, yes. Well, before we get there, how is motherhood treating you?
Motherhood is treating me great. I'm exhausted, as is to be expected with the newborn, but always a blessing.
Well, indeed it is, and I wish you all the very best with that. Okay, let's talk about impending World War III, as you put it. You are implacably opposed to what both Israel and now the United States have done here. Why?
Yeah. Because, well, first and foremost, just on the MAGA movement level, Trump came out and he gave us a promise that we were not going to be involved in wars. And I'm going back to 2015. Why did people get so excited about Donald Trump, who was then an unlikely candidate, who was being smeared by the media as being Adolf Hitler? Well, it was because he recognized that the American people were being forgotten while we were giving billions of unaccounted billions, by the way, for these never-ending wars. And so it's one of the earliest reasons that people got behind him and got behind his vision. And so we're opposed to a regime change because America as a country has a lot of problems that need to be fixed here first. It's that simple.
Right, but it's not quite that simple. And I'll explain to you why. Because Donald Trump, I think he's not been inconsistent in the sense that in his first term, he wasn't a pacifist. You know, he killed General Soleimani. He killed Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, and went after them.
He wasn't a pacifist. No new wars, no new wars, no new wars. Let's see how many neo-Nazi conspiracies Candace Owens can get through. Maybe she's shifted over the past few months. I don't know.
Ferociously, he attacked Syria when they killed American troops. He dropped a massive bomb in Afghanistan. It wasn't like he never deployed the American military. And again, here, what he would argue, and has been arguing, is he's not declared war on anybody. What he's done is very specifically target Iran's nuclear capability because of latest reports coming out which said they had taken the enrichment of their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60%, and that therefore the leap to weaponization was moving at a pace that couldn't be tolerated. I've got to say, I kind of agree. Now, if he suddenly commits troops on the ground, then that becomes a different thing altogether. But even when Trump talked about regime change, I think he...
How can Destiny shit on Hassan and others for chair react when he literally does chair react all the time, genuinely? When have you ever seen me shit on people for chair react? I generally don't. I make fun of Hassan for random stuff, but I'm not like super bought into the IP react memes or whatever bullshit. Like if you want to talk about like intellectual property violations, if I'm here or not, if Piers Morgan Uncensored, the YouTube channel, were to sue me, whether I'm here commenting on this or not, it's probably not a case I would win for fair use. Like obsession over fair use stuff is not usually something I talk about much at all. I don't really care that much about it.
He meant from within, as we saw in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up. And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs in Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not.
This is such a reductionist, stupid fucking take, but...
Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Strait. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top managers?
But yeah, what about when he bombed Syria?
Sure, an assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6...
Okay, what about the strike in Syria? Please, Piers, have this one, the strike in Syria.
Bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it, and that answers the question as to why
There you go. We got the Zog. Do you think they'll bring bring up that clean break memo or whatever.
Is this split in the MAGA movement? What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons,
Yes.
people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with
America's declined right now just because of Israel. True.
the MAGA people who grew up, I call us like, Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer, cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other. And we also are completely done with the idea that with this decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat.
These people, sometimes the talking points are ripped from like 2003. Like who? Or maybe people have said it and I've missed it. Is anybody talking about spreading democracy in Iran? Is that even a talking point right now? Or is this coming from the Iraq war trauma that people have?
To the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've
Pivot to America and Israel. Always pivot. Always pivot. Always pivot to America and Israel.
I don't think it's widely accepted. No, that's just kind of
Really? You don't think they
Israel
have?
has been a terrorist state. Okay,
Yes.
Israel right now
Yes.
is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people.
Yes. Destiny, no meme. What is war then? What features must be present for it to be a war versus a special operation? And does that definition match what the average American's definition of war is? Yes. Nobody believes that this is a war. That's a term that you use when you're trying to get like all the moral normative value on your side of the argument. A war is when we start deploying soldiers and we have like extended troops on the ground in some region for some major military operation. No American citizen genuinely feels like this bombing mission was the same as the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, where we had troops on the ground for extended periods of time. Now, if you want to call this a war or whatever, that's fine, but you deserve to lose all of the normative value that you get from ordinarily being horrified by wars and our involvement, because it is a far, far, far different thing. Not to say that like bombing people isn't an act of war. It certainly is, or it's a aggressive thing, of course, but to call it like a war, like the same way that like Iraq was a war or the Vietnam War was a war, this is fucking stupid. Virtue signaling, cringe.
This idea like somehow Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get behind them.
I didn't say
because we got to
that.
go after the bad
I
guys.
wasn't saying that.
We have.
Oh, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza, where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months.
But it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned.
Wait, of who? Wait.
Agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months.
But it's relevant. If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned.
Well, I mean, like, how long was this happening in Syria? How long was this happening in Yemen? I mean, seems like nobody gave a fuck, right?
About Iran having nukes, but I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes, having nukes, while at the same time, they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say, as an American, that if we're going to get behind a regime change...
Yes, there we go. Israel and America, bigger terrorists. Good pivot. Good pivot. At Destiny, totally semantics. Deconstruct it all, Tiny. You're such a liar. You're so disingenuous. I don't know if you guys can even tell. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe
it should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America. Can you name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America? That us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America?
But can you also recognize that Israel, placed where it is, as a tiny thumbprint in the middle of a region where you have massive countries full of a lot of people that want to wish them harm, and in the case of the terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, actually want to get rid of Israel and all Israelis altogether, can you accept that if you have a huge nation like Iran with 90 million people...
Dude, I wish I wouldn't have wasted my time. We should have studied programming. These conversations are so boring. It's like always dancing around the issue. Nobody ever gets to the actual issue. There's no real conversation. This is so autistic. I hate these.
And they are facilitating the terror groups to that purpose, that Iran has to defend itself. Now, I would not disagree with you about what has been going on in Gaza in the last few months. I've been very vocal in my criticism of that. Nor do I disagree, by the way, that it wouldn't help Israel if they did have regime change and Netanyahu wasn't prime minister anymore. So on those points, I think we have agreement. But I come back to the fact that the reason Trump has done this, I think, is that he has for a long time said Iran...
No one will ever engage on any of the factual points. The Middle East is... maybe the Middle East... Oh, no, fuck, because I went there. I was going to say, if I hadn't gone to Israel, I don't even know if the Middle East is real. I think it's just like a fantasy land that's created for everybody to kind of ship their own political viewpoints and agendas into. Like, you kind of just like use these countries. Like, remember when Muslim Stan said that they wanted to all American girls, and then remember when Capital Jewishstein bombed it's just a region that exists for you to ship whatever retarded political ideology you have. It's so fucking boring.
Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. I think he's absolutely right to believe that would be a pretty terrifying escalation.
Israel has a nuclear bomb. Pivot again to Israel having a nuke.
The power of a country that's been so wedded to terrorism in the region. And I think he took the action for that reason. So I don't really agree that he's only doing it because Bibi Netanyahu wants him to go along and do it. I think he's doing it because he believes it's in America's strategic interest that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
It is not in America's strategic interest. There was no imminent threat. He could have taken this to Congress and he could have allowed the people's representatives to vote on whether or not
nobody does
it was
that.
in the American
But
people. There was
no president in living memory has, with almost zero exceptions.
Didn't Obama do that? Wasn't that why he didn't do anything to enforce the red line? Because he couldn't get support from Congress to doing it afterwards? When he says nobody's done that, I'd have to go back and look that up. But
has bothered to get congressional pre-approval for military strikes. We know that. You know that.
Yeah,
I
we know that. And that's
Obama
not okay.
was the
By the way, that's not
Obama
okay.
did more strikes than anybody, right?
Yes.
I mean, Obama never asked anybody
I'm
for any
an Obama
permission.
supporter.
Obama red line. The authorization for the use of military force against the government of Syria to respond to the use of chemical weapons is a United States Senate joint resolution that would have authorized President Barack Obama to use the American military to intervene in the ongoing Syrian civil war. The bill was filed by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid on September 6, 2013, in a specially scheduled pro forma Senate session that took place on the last week of the August recess. The bill would have authorized only 60 days of military action with the possibility of a one-time extension of 30 days. However, the support never received a floor vote in either the House or the Senate. So I think Obama did try to get congressional approval for intervention, and then they didn't give it to him. And then he didn't. So it's kind of funny that he uses Obama as an excuse here, but okay.
Yeah, that doesn't make it okay. By the way, like that argument, just so we're clear, saying, well, we've been doing it wrong forever, so we should just keep doing it wrong, is not an argument that's right.
I don't disagree with you about that.
Okay, so I disagree with Obama doing it. I disagree with Trump doing it. And especially when what we're talking about is what could rise to be a nuclear war, right? We should have done things the right way. And he had indicated that he was going to wait 2 weeks, and then he didn't wait 2 weeks because Bibi Netanyahu, at least according to the Israeli press, if you believe it, said, we're not waiting 2 weeks, we want this done immediately. But I will say, you are correct. He's not just doing this because Bibi Netanyahu demands it. He's also doing it because Miriam...
This is an argument like saying my neighbor has a gun, so I should, even though I didn't pass a background check. No, it's like somebody's like, this guy has a gun and this guy's going to get a gun. What should we do about it? And then you're saying like, okay, well, in Lord of the Rings, like the Two Towers, it doesn't make sense that horses weren't getting stabbed more by orcs. It's just like, it's just a vector to talk about other retarded shit. Like I said, the conversation should begin with, if Iran has nuclear weapons, is the United States better or worse off? And then go from there. That would be the start of the conversation. All of this other random pivoting bullshit is for subhuman, disgusting fucks like Candace to push her neo-Nazi bullshit, subhuman, disgusting fucks like Glenn Beck to push his, I don't know, whatever the fuck he's on, or subhuman, disgusting fucks like Bill O'Reilly to push whatever shit he's on. I don't know where these two are at politically right now. If Bill O'Reilly is still a stock neocon, and if Glenn Beck is gone, I think he's gone full off on the delusional conspiracy bandwagon, but we'll see, I guess, when he comes in. I don't know.
Adelson demands it. He took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. It was very clear what she wanted. She was clear that she wanted to annex the West Bank.
Adelson is that big donor to Trump's campaign who's Jewish, so of course it's all Zog shit, Zionist-owned or Zionist-occupied government.
So there was an imperialist plan that was put into place. And unfortunately, when you do a deal with the devil, you're going to have to eventually deliver the pound of flesh. And that is what Trump is doing, in my opinion. And more evidence of that is the fact when he tweeted that there could be a Trump hotel in Gaza. I mean, that was truly...
Where's good political conversations at? Nowhere right now. Not about this shit. Probably not anywhere. Like, nobody wants them. The people are just like here to jerk off about retarded shit. So online content, alternative media is a fucking wasteland for political conversation.
In my opinion, the most inhumane thing he's ever tweeted.
Well, I think it was pretty clear. I think what he was doing there was pretty clear. He's saying he wants a better life for Palestinian people, a life where they have beaches,
well, when you
and they
pair
have
that
hotels,
with Jared
and they have golf
Kushner and
courses.
Jared Kushner's private equity firm and their ties to what's happening in Israel and Jared Kushner being on camera shortly after October 7th saying, wow, that property could be worth a lot of money, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It makes Americans a little bit uncomfortable. Now, you've asked me to come onto your show to explain to you how the now very fractured MAGA movement is healing, and I'm telling you that, right?
No, it's
and
really,
so,
honestly,
I
find the split in the conservative movement in America genuinely fascinating because it really is a genuine schism now.
Yeah, there's a genuine schism, and it's only going one direction. And by the way, we shouldn't even call this a schism because trying to dress this up and delude us into believing that the MAGA movement is what has Meghan McCain cheering, John Bolton cheering, has Mark Levin cheering, the literal
all of the neocon cheerleaders, and you know if they're on one side, it must be a bad idea.
Of the Never Trump movement are saying this is real MAGA. Yeah, we're not going to be that delusional.
You're on the same side as Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. How do you feel about that?
You're asking about the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement has always been a movement that explicitly did not want to keep involving our sons and daughters in the Middle East. So we have not changed that.
Then why were you okay with the Syrian strikes? Why were you okay with the assassination of Soleimani? Like, why were you okay with all of the drone strikes in Yemen?
Position. If AOC was always anti-war, then she should have thrown on a red hat in 2020 and in 2015 and joined the MAGA movement. That would have been fantastic.
But are you saying America should...
When was AOC first elected to Congress? Was it was that long ago? It might have been 2015. Assumed office 2019. Is that when she was first in office? 2015? Or did she say 2018?
War, then she should have thrown on a red hat in 2020 and in 2015 and joined.
Oh, 2015.
The MAGA movement. That would have been fantastic.
But are you saying America should never use any military
You're on the same side
action?
as Greta Thunberg when it comes to the Palestinians
Right,
being
but are you saying,
murdered
Candace,
every
are you
day?
saying,
I am. I'm aligned.
Okay, but are you saying that America should never use any military action then?
No, I'm not saying America can never use any military action. In fact, what I said earlier was I could get behind a regime change in Israel because I think it would fix a lot of issues that are happening and that has been happening to America over time. Like
But
I said,
why
America
wouldn't you want it in Iran? I mean, I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
Because Iran is not negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis.
How does Iran represent a threat to any U.S. allies in the region? At least get her to say, because her actual point is that we shouldn't have any allies in the region, Saudi Arabia or Israel. But then at least you can progress the conversation from there, I guess.
But when the leader of Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
Okay, that's a chant. And by the way, I want to be very clear.
That's a chant.
Why are they chanting death to America?
Oh, we need to look into the reasons why. Why did people try to assassinate Trump? I don't know. Oh, now we got to look at the reasons why. Oh, we're so kind and understanding.
Why are they chanting that? That's kind of a random thing. Like, I know,
because they want Americans dead?
But why are they specifically chanting as opposed to saying, I don't know, death to China or death to Russia? What is it specifically about
America? Well, they say
America?
death to America, death to Israel, death to the United Kingdom, actually.
Oh, okay.
Death to pretty much anyone that wants to stand up to them.
Could it have something to do with our...
Could it have something to do with the fact that we interfere in the Middle East?
Our actions in the Middle East is why I'm saying that we need a change in foreign policy. Maybe it has something to do with just like killing 1 million Iraqi civilians, okay?
A million.
Because Bibi Netanyahu...
A million. I think Noam Chomsky was the one who popularized the bullshit 500,000 civilian number. Now it's up to 1 million. How many millions of people have we killed in Iraq?
Who got on a congressional stage and said there are weapons of mass destruction, and we took that to the bank, and there actually were no weapons of mass destruction, so we just killed 1 million. It could have something, I could be crazy, it could have something to do with our actions in the Middle East. The fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the Al-Qaeda adjacent front because he wanted to overthrow Syria, and they, again, expand their borders, immediately take on territory, and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There's footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera.
Oh
so it's just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretend that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are people that are imparting it worldwide.
Wow.
I just think that, like I said, Generation 9/11 has grown up, and I think that our eyes are very clear here, and we recognize that our relationship with Israel has become increasingly problematic, and it always was problematic. So I'll again ask the questions, Piers. I'm asking you because we're having a conversation. Yeah. Name something positive that our Zionist AIPAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well, Zionist AIPAC foreign policy based.
I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time from people that want to destroy it. And that you may not see that as...
Do you think that Candace believes what she says? No, I think Candace is an evil person. I don't think she believes almost anything that she says. She lands onto too much conspiracy stuff, like at too much of an opportune time. She's too much of a parasite, of a leech to everything around her. She did the same when she got into Kanye West's ear. I think that she's just a demonic, evil human being. Like one of the most evil human beings. I think she's uniquely evil.
A benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways, right? So why shouldn't America...
I just want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Like, just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
I mean, we jointly developed the Iron Dome thing. We ensure like free trade through the Suez Canal, right, as part of the Egyptian-Israel cooperation. We don't ever have to worry about that, except for the Houthis, I guess. We strengthen relationships with OPEC, or with some of OPEC, with allies in the region and the Gulf states. I mean, but all of these things are like less tangential. You could run this argument with everybody, although they'd agree. You're like, well, what do we get for our alliance with the EU? Give me something concrete. I don't know, but like preferential trade. Well, they would trade with us. Like, truly, you could use this argument with basically every single country. Like, what do we get for this? I mean, like, you're not gonna be able to. It's not like they, cut us, like, give us an allowance or something. But
well, you're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America. Of course you're not.
No, I'm just
obviously there are obvious tangible benefits.
What your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians.
What a wild retelling of that story. Okay.
Horrific story.
Well, they weren't pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.
Let's be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed, but at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint, and it's wrong. So we get to be the nation.
Also wrong.
Nice based.
the back. According to you, the thing that America does. Let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. But let me finish. But your argument is that what we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank. Because, like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Look, as you know, I oppose what the Israeli government is doing now in Gaza. I oppose the expansion of settlements on the West Bank. I think all of that is completely wrong. I do think America supports Israel because it remains the only democracy in the Middle East, and that's an important.
They're not a democracy. Stop saying that, Piers. You know better.
Well, they have elections.
It's not a democracy.
They are a democracy. I don't know what. Oh, they're not a democracy, but okay.
Elections.
But who gets to vote in those elections? Do the Gazans get to vote in that election?
Well,
Gaza is not formally part of the country of Israel, right? That doesn't make it not a democracy, though. I mean,
the Israelis get to vote in Israel, obviously.
Okay, so you're basically saying America had a democracy, when we had
Israel
laws that said Black Americans couldn't, Black Americans.
well, no, because Black Americans were in U.S. states and didn't have citizenship and couldn't get citizenship in U.S. states and couldn't even vote when they were parts of those U.S. states. Were they considered citizens? No, they must not have been when they were just property. I don't know what the legal filing of them would have been. This is such a stupid comparison. If you want a better comparison, honestly, you should ask her, how do you feel about like DC and Puerto Rico? Shouldn't they have votes that matter? Shouldn't they get representation in Congress? Aren't these guys, like, is the United States not a democracy because DC doesn't have any representation? Because Puerto Rico doesn't have any representation? That would be an interesting question, but.
Basically saying America had a democracy, when we had
Israel
laws that said Black Americans.
Also, by the way, not to be mean, I don't know why I'm saying that. Fuck, I don't give a fuck. Like, yes, America did have a democracy. Even when we had slavery, we still had a democracy. Like, was it perfect? No. Were there some people who were disenfranchised with their vote? Yes. But like, even before women's suffrage, we still had a democracy. What form of government did we have if it wasn't a democracy? What would you call it? What?
Israel moved out. It is indisputable that Israel moved out of Gaza in 2005, and there was an election, and Hamas got elected. Right now,
yeah,
I agree.
I agree
with you.
Bibi Netanyahu was on camera saying that they were going to fund Hamas into power. So they orchestrated that because if they wanted to create a solution.
I agree with you that Netanyahu wanted to cause a split between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It was divided.
Do people think Piers giving these people charity leads to these meaningless conversations? Most people don't think these conversations are meaningless. They like watching it. It's blood sports. It's good shit. Like, actual conversations on the topics are, you would have to actually do some research and reading, and none of these people will do it. And if you push them too much to have a real conversation, then they'll just never go on your show.
Divide and rule. It was a catastrophically bad strategy, and it led to what happened on October the 7th over a 20-year period. There's no doubt. It was a terrible thing that Netanyahu did, one of the many reasons I think he should go. But there was no doubt that the Israelis pulled out of Gaza and allowed them to have elections, and they elected Hamas, and the rest has been disastrous history.
Because the Israelis because Bibi Netanyahu, they funded Hamas.
I don't disagree with you.
That's why they elected Hamas initially? That's not true, by the way. But okay, that's a nice lie. Okay. What does she think that Qatar funding thing, that statement was made, or with reference to what time period?
But they still had elections.
So it's like we rigged an election, but look what the election results show is that they wanted to put Hamas into power. And so when we talk about who is funding these terrorists, the answer is Bibi Netanyahu. And I don't want to get into his corruption trials, but every single person watching this right now should go pursue the documentary, The Bibi Files, because it is absolutely stunning to understand.
I believe one of the reasons. I believe one of the reasons.
Let me answer the question, because you still haven't given me anything other than like you guys get a pat on the back for supporting this created nation in the Middle East. I would also just like to say all of the bad things that we have gotten because of our continued relation.
Like 9/11, that was by the war in Iraq, Libya, Iran, Syria. Am I missing anything?
Okay.
With Israel. First and foremost, the open borders. And you can relate to this. People in the UK, they just can't see.
Oh, shit. I forgot. Not just Israel, but the Jews in the U.S. as well. Because we believe in both Jews are fucking us over. Damn.
Connect the dots.
All right.
Oh my gosh, what's happening here? But I want to say this. Okay, we don't understand where all these refugees are coming from. Oh my God, where are all these refugees coming from? Who's funding them coming over into these borders? Well, this is what you get when you keep supporting these nonstop wars. When you keep bombing where these people live, and it's not even just a conspiracy.
Does she mean refugees in Europe, or does she think that like refugees are fleeing to the United States from the Middle East, or from?
By the way, if you're like, oh well,
actually, you're wrong about it.
Yes, I think. Oh, okay.
It's because the vast majority of people coming into the UK illegally are not coming from war-torn countries in the Middle East. They're actually economic migrants. So that's not true.
But let's connect that. Let's connect that. When you say economic migrants, are we talking about like
people who literally want to come to the UK for a better life?
And when Gaddafi was heading up Libya, and the country was on the up and up, and he was working with the United Nations.
True, Gaddafi, the loved democratic leader, the loved leader who definitely wasn't murdering his own people and potentially gearing up to start mass killing people, and was locking up political opponents and claiming that there was LSD and Pepsi or whatever, and it was brainwashing his population. Definitely that guy. That was a cool dude for sure.
Then all of a sudden he warned that if you collapse Libya and turn it into a place where refugees are escaping, that this is going to be your problem in Europe. He warned that. So then it actually happened. And now we're just calling them economic migrants. We're going to pretend
that we had nothing to do. I'm not talking about people coming from Libya.
Okay, where are you speaking about?
Well, for example, I think it was last year, a third of all the people who came into the UK on the border on the small boats illegally, it turned out were young economic migrant males from Albania, which last time I checked, we hadn't invaded. So look, let me pull you back to something you said, which has caused a lot of controversy, which is this issue of dishonourable discharge. Let's take a listen.
I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares? Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can see, think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country, whatever, and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves for what?
For the
and
Jews.
the answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers.
Israel.
When you said that, were you aware of the repercussions if people dishonorably discharged?
So just to put this into context, this is like the Q&A, live Q&A portion at the end of my show. And being facetious, but also being completely honest, that they should begin to consider, and that was somebody asking, what should we do? Like, should we leave the military because they also
do you regret
are recognizing that? No, I don't regret saying that. I don't.
But you know
regret
the repercussions if you do discharge dishonorably.
Okay, well, I would imagine that the people that are in the military who were going to, if they were going to listen to my podcast and they were going to dishonorably discharge, that they would know the consequences. So it's completely ridiculous. And again, we see this over and over again where people can't answer the broader questions. They try to suddenly pick in, well, you said this one thing. No, the broader conversation we are having.
It's not a small thing.
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
You're basically you're encouraging U.S. servicemen and women to dishonorably discharge.
You play a clip, and I'm trying to answer it. You know, you can't do that. You ask a question.
Well, you're trying to downplay it,
and I'm responding. No, I am. No, you're trying to upplay it. Is what the issue is. This is exactly.
I'm just repeating what you said.
You're not. You're playing what I said, and I'm responding to it and telling you that the broader piece of that conversation, when you have troops that are now asking that question, is they are recognizing that America is in steep decline, that our military comes back and they are treated like dirt. That a lot of these men, and we're talking about decades, white American males come back and they're told that they're racist and they're treated like crap, that they're white supremacists, that they have a different.
The wokes. Oh God. The real problem with the Iraq War was that when these soldiers came back from Iraq, they were attacked by the wokies. They came back from Iraq and they were suddenly told that they had to accept transgenderism. Oh no.
Vision for this country. So why are they dying in these overseas wars for Bibi Netanyahu? Okay, and let me again try to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning, which is what has Zionism won America? What have these never ending? No, let me finish. Why won't you let me answer that? Why won't you let me actually say what people are recognizing? You come back and there are open borders, and you're told that you are racist. Okay, you come back and you're told that you are racist if you don't want open borders. Meanwhile, you're sent overseas to defend Israel's borders. It's a nonsense. And who's funding these open borders? According to Barry Weiss, and I quote, Barry Weiss said this verbatim: "The Jewish connection to the refugee is not a conspiracy. That's something that we are very proud of." And she was referencing the organization HIAS, and she says explicitly, which she said what was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in, like Sergey Brin. They are still the organization that's operating at our border right now. Okay, that is problematic. That we have open borders while we.
The 1880s was pushing for open migration into the United States? Wait, what?
Explicitly, which she said what was started by them in the 1880s, which includes immigrants that have come in, like Sergey Brin. They are still
Based. Okay.
the organization that's operating at our border right now. Okay, that is problematic. That we have open borders while we continually and routinely are told that we have to defend somebody else's borders. Okay, and again, these never-ending wars in the Middle East at the behest of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu is the one that called for Americans to invade Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and now Iran, and we've done it. We're told Israel can defend itself. Okay, so but why do we have currently 2,000 troops that are in Syria under the guise of fighting ISIS? And like I said, we know Israel themselves fund terror-adjacent militants like they did to overthrow Assad. And we're done with the BS of, okay, well, they weren't really involved Israel in that.
Does Piers know she's like a full-on neo-Nazi? I wonder if he is aware of all this. Who knows? I don't know.
Afghanistan, because even when we fight those never-ending wars, Israel wins. Everybody knows that our boys were out there in Afghanistan guarding poppy fields, okay? And do you know what happened after we allegedly, quote-unquote, lost in Afghanistan? What happened to all those poppy fields, those poppy flowers that our military was guarding? Well, the opioid crisis hit America via the Sackler family, who quite literally built the School of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. So we're just done, okay? And there's no way that we're going to go.
All of our opiates are coming from Afghanistan, not China or Mexico. Or maybe they started in Afghanistan.
Backwards. We're not going to allow you guys to emotionally condition us. Oh, well, we got to protect Israel because of the Holocaust. It is over. They're imparting a Holocaust. America would like off this crazy train.
Okay, for the benefit of viewers who don't know what I was talking about, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 90, dishonourable discharge can result in forfeiture of all pay and allowances up to 5 years confinement, which is a pretty heavy penalty to pay.
Yeah, I'd want my kids to go to jail before they fought for Israel. I'll say that honestly.
Okay.
I would. I have 3 sons, and I'm going to be honest with you, Pierce. I'm glad you told me that consequence. I'd take that consequence any day to them being sent back over in a coffin because they died for Israel. So.
Okay, but I think the one thing you're missing, I come from a big military family, a lot of military in my family, and a lot of people fighting wars on behalf of the United States are not doing it because they think Bibi Netanyahu wants them to. They're doing it because
some of them do that, and they write into the show.
Right, but many of them won't, and they might be offended by you suggesting that's the only reason they're doing it.
And they can watch your show, and they can be offended all they want, but I think it's more offensive the way that our military is treated, the veterans are treated, and the gaslighting that takes place when we're told that we have to defend everybody's borders. But I
actually think America treats its veterans better than almost any country in the world.
I mean, this has always been an open conversation, and I'm just saying that if my boys were being drafted to fight this war in Iran, I would be like, you know what, honey, take the other option. And that's not because it's cowardice, it's because when you sign up for the military,
okay, but I would say that the pilots,
you are pledging that you are doing something that is going to better your country.
Candace,
and like I said, our country has been in steep decline since we have been part of this foreign policy, which is just whatever Israel Israel
Okay,
wants.
you made that point, but what I would say to you is the only people so far that have been involved from the American military were the extraordinarily courageous and skillful pilots who flew these B-2 bombers and attacked the nuclear sites and got back safely. So there's been no troops on the ground committed at all, no declaration of war by the United States. We can quibble. Listen, I don't disagree with you. You bomb somewhere, you probably are at war with them. But there was no official declaration of war, just as Trump, when he took out Soleimani and Baghdadi and he attacked Syria and so on, he didn't declare war on those places. And actually it turned out that the
we got the Syrian attack in there. Good job.
apocalyptic warnings of those actions never materialized. So we shall see. I can't let you go without asking. Let me ask you just quickly about the Tucker-Ted Cruz debate. What did you make of that?
Fantastic.
I think that Tucker did a great job. I think Cruz got shown to be the Zionist shill that he was, and I think Tucker obliviated him. She's obviously 100% bought into Tucker's camp. This weird pro-Russian, anti-American isolationist, probably foreign paid, crazy propaganda, whatever bullshit they're doing.
Fantastic. It is finally the debate that needed to happen in America, because a part of this nonstop policy is this belief, as you said, Ted Cruz, that if we just do whatever Israel wants, that God's going to bless you. And it's quite ironic because it comes from Protestants, and their normal argument is that the reason why we had to have this fracture in the church was because of indulgences. Well, there's nothing more indulgent than I'm going to be blessed if I just do whatever Israel says. And so because we are finally having that spiritual conversation, which is more important, I suspect there's going to be major changes in the United States going forward, and that is why you're seeing this fracture in the base already.
Okay.
Tucker, according to Donald Trump, Tucker rang Trump to apologize for some of the more strident rhetoric he's used against him recently. Are you done with Donald Trump, or could you see a way that you would end up perhaps voting for him? Oh, you can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment, and I feel embarrassed.
Remember, guys, just keep tabs on all this. With Biden and with Kamala, the lefties, right, your Hassan Pikers, these people are looking for, give me a reason, give me an excuse not to vote for you. So much so that they won't even endorse the candidate. Meanwhile, you have Candace Owens, who is a full-blown neo-Nazi. She subscribes to, she just did the great migration thing with immigration. She believes in the whole Zog shit. She definitely believes at 9/11. I don't know if she's talked about it. If anybody has a video of her, I bet she believes that 9/11 was caused by the Jews. Like, she believes that all the wars in the Middle East are caused by Israel, right? This is a neo-Nazi. Donald Trump is literally an Israel cocksuck. Donald Trump is a massive Israel simp. Okay, that nobody can deny. Do I make the argument in here that if anybody's controlled by the Jews, it's probably Donald Trump? Is that this debate where I make that argument?
On the ground there, I would say that Donald Trump makes me really nervous when it comes to Israel, because I've never seen a more Zoggy type president. It makes me really worry that I think Donald Trump ordered that hit on Soleimani. He was the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is responsible for a lot of the international meddling that goes along, inside of Israel. He supported Hezbollah, he supported the Houthis, he supported Hamas, and I kind of wonder if Donald Trump only ordered that assassination because of the $100 million that Adelson and other AIPAC donors sent to his campaign. I know
You see that I'm like, these are all the neo-Nazi talking points that she's bringing right now. She brought up the Adelson person. She brought up the $100 million. She brings up the fact that Israel funds these terrorist groups. She brings up the fact that we only hit Soleimani because, these are super common, bog standard neo-Nazi talking points. This debate was like almost a year ago.
Donald Trump is on record saying publicly that he is Israel's strongest supporter. I know that Donald Trump created a position in the White House and sent his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to the Middle East to negotiate peace deals for
She brought up the Kushner connection and everything as well, right? Yeah.
Israel. I don't know why the United States is risking itself to make peace agreements for Israel, for other countries between them and Israel. And then I know that we talk about moving the embassy and recognizing. I think it was like America was like one of 3 countries to do that. I thought that was really weird. And along with that, I think Trump was also willing to go along with Netanyahu, when Netanyahu was talking about cutting UNRWA funding and everything to the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And I don't think that Donald Trump did anything to hold Israel accountable for any of its behavior in the Middle East. So I think one of the things that I'm the most worried about when it comes to Donald Trump and foreign policy is he definitely comes off as kind of like an Israeli Jewish puppet, and that just makes me really nervous. I think I'd rather have somebody like Kamala Harris, who seems to be really critical of Israel and their foreign policy, and seems to be a lot less bought and paid for by.
So I'm making this is the neo-Nazi argument, but keep in mind that, so I'm making the verbatim neo-Nazi argument that she's making, okay? But the difference is on the left, people will look for any reason not to support the candidate. She fully buys into the neo-Nazi argument related to Jews running the U.S. However, she still supports Donald Trump. What the fuck, guys?
Certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that
She still supports him! What?
End up perhaps voting for him. Oh, you can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment, and I feel embarrassed that I told people to go vote for him because this wasn't going to happen, and it is happening. But I just think that the picture of politics in America is going to look very differently because of his actions. So I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. But I
don't know. It's wild to me.
This is not the candidate that I voted for.
If it turns out that his instincts were right, that by doing what he did, it brings Iran to the negotiating table and they do a deal on their nuclear plans.
Oh, yeah? Trump, that deal master.
Would you admit that you were wrong in that circumstance?
Yeah. I will always admit when I'm wrong. Anybody that listens to my podcast knows that. It just so happens to be, especially if I come on to the Piers Morgan show and I make some predictions, and it ends up that I'm right. So I'm feeling lucky, but I will of course admit I'm wrong if that is the result.
Candace, always good to have your views on Uncensored. You know that. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.